Okay, now that that's out of the way. Hey guys, I'm back. So it's been a few days. I didn't get to recording yet. It's been like I don't think I've recorded since when? I don't know. I don't remember the last day I recorded. Actually, if I go here, I can actually see. Oh, okay. The last time was the 12th. Oh, oh, okay. The last time was March 12th. So it's been like 5 days, give or take, since I recorded. Actually, not give or take, it's been exactly 5 days. I don't know why I said that. But check out my haircut. And also, I love these glasses. These are my new ones. I have these it was like zebra stripes. I love that. I found other ones with like a similar pattern. I found other ones with like a similar pattern like a zebra stripes, but I think I don't remember what the problem was. There was some kind of problem, maybe that they were too small to fit on my face or something, and they were gonna keep slipping down. Like I think that's what the guy said. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, so either way, I'm back to record some chapters. And it's only 5:30, so I want to try and do quite a bit of recording, like as much as possible. I gotta take a shower later because I haven't had a shower in a couple of days, but other than that, I'm pretty much just gonna be recording and, taking breaks to eat food and stuff. Um, and I do want to mention to you guys, I'm like right in the middle of a job search. Like I'm taking a break currently, but I've given my resume to a few places. I think the last time was like a week or so ago, and I'm planning to give my excuse me. I'm planning to give my resume to like a few other places. My mom said she'd probably have no issue driving me, so I'm gonna make like a list of places that I need to go. I already dropped my resume off at like the Walmart and in the movie theater in my area, but I also want to go outside the first two a little bit because I dropped it off in Newmarket at the Walmart in Newmarket and the movie theater in Newmarket, but I'd like to go to the Aurora movie theater. Drop my resume off at the Dollarama, both in Newmarket and like in around the area as close as I can get, like maybe as far as Aurora, because can actually get to Aurora. Like I've been to the Aurora movie theater. I have no problem like going to the Aurora movie theater in an Uber or whatever, and obviously once I get a job I'm gonna have to pay for Ubers anyway, but I'm like right in the middle of a job search, so I'm like right in the eye of the storm as far as finding a job. It's I dropped my resume off I think at like three places by this point, but I'm planning to drop them off at like a few more, like a couple of Dollaramas, a couple of Walmarts if they're hiring, movie theater in Aurora, movie theater in Aurora, um I don't know. I can't think of other places, but may I did see like an ad on one of my YouTube videos, like not on one of my YouTube videos, but on a YouTube video that I was watching. Like I saw an ad on a YouTube video that I was watching for Tim Hortons talking about how they were looking for part-time jobs, talking about how, come work at Tim Hortons, we're awesome and stuff. And I don't know if the Tim Hortons in my area is hiring, but I'm gonna ask them too, just because I'm curious and because I'm trying to expand my job search as far as possible. And I do have one last resort, which I really don't want to do, but when I was in my early 20s, I did get a job at Eastside Mario's. I'm pretty sure if you go like way back in my video library, you can find videos where I talk about my job or whatever. Anyway, I got a job at Eastside Mario's and I worked there for like 6 months as a bus person. So I can like almost 100% get my old job back if I went back there and if they were hiring at the time. Obviously, I'm going to call them to check if they're hiring first, but that's only after I've exhausted like all other possibilities, like every Dollarama in my area, every Walmart in my area, every other like movie theater or whatever else in my area, like after I've exhausted all other possibilities, because I'd rather not go back to that. But if I really do have to, then I will, and I should have no problem going back to that. But um, I need more money coming in for a couple of reasons. I'd like to. I right now I'm like barely getting by each month, so I'd like to have a little more money to, do more. And also I'd like to be able to pay for my own haircuts and stuff, which is something I discussed with my mom like a few years ago before the pandemic happened. And then, we decided just we just didn't go into that because like, it's the pandemic and I was just like we were in a very um we were in a situation where I don't really know how to say it, but you guys know what I'm trying to say, I think. Um anyway, so yeah, there's that. I like to be able to pay for my own haircuts, apartment essentials, clothes, like without any issues. That would be fantastic. Cause right now, even like when I go to I am affording the stuff I need, but just barely. And a second thing is I like to have some money in my savings account for like a snake or, an emergency. Like if my computer dies and I need a new one. If my computer breaks, I don't have like another computer and I don't have another way to get another computer. And my mom is paying a lot of my rent right now, so she doesn't really have she can't she's very a lot more short on money than she normally would be because ever since I moved into this place almost a year ago, she's now been helping me with rent too. So there's that, and that's a whole thing. So yeah, basically there's that as well. So my point is I want a job for like a lot of reasons, so I'm right in the middle of doing that. And like I've barely started. I've only turned my resume into a couple of places, but I plan to turn it into like as many places as possible where I think I could possibly work, because I want to make sure that I can actually do the work if I get the job or whatever. Like, it's frustrating because I do have disabilities, which makes it harder for me to do some jobs and stuff. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. So, okay. Anyway, I'm gonna get started reading now because I've been talking for like 7 minutes, and the point of this was to read the book, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. And once I do get the job, I'll discuss like how that's gonna affect everything, like, how active I'm gonna be on this channel, stuff like that, because obviously there might be some changes that you guys are gonna have to deal with because, I'm gonna have a job, so I'm hoping to work at least 10 hours a week, because if I'm working 10 hours a week, then that's like the minimum wage is like $15 an hour, so that's like $600 a month. And there was recently a change to ODSP where as long as you are making $1,000 or less, it isn't going to affect your ODSP in any way. So that's pretty fantastic because I could pretty much double my ODSP if I wanted to and, not have an issue, which is great because the ODSP should be doubled anyway. Like, it should be 20 something $100. Like, I'm pretty sure the most you can get is about $1,100, and they should up that to like $2,200. Yeah, if I had $2,200, I'd be able to pay my rent. I'd be able to pay for like groceries, movies each week. Um, yeah, my rent is like 12 or $1,300, I think. So yeah, let's just say $1,200, and then I'd have $1,000 left, and then it's like, let's say $100 a week for movies and groceries, which is about correct. So yeah, $400, and then I'd have like $600 left, which is about the amount I'm trying to make doing my job anyway, like doing my work anyway. So perfect. I don't know. Anyway, wait, no, that's not right. $1,200 for rent, $400. Wait, $2,200, $1,200. I'd have $1,000, $400. Yeah, it is $600. Okay, anyway, I don't I feel like I messed up the math on that. I feel like that can't be right. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, there's that. But also, I want a snake. Like, I want to go to the Reptile Expo next year and I want to come home with a snake. But to do that, I need to save money. So, yeah, there's that too. Like, just a few different reasons why I need a job. So, I don't know. Or I could just keep living, like, right on the edge, but I don't really want to do that. So anyway, I I'm eventually gonna need a new computer, don't, even if I don't have a job, I'm eventually gonna need a new computer. And then if I'm non-subsidized housing, how is that gonna work with my mom paying most of my rent? And she's not gonna have enough money to get me a computer, so what am I supposed to do? I need a computer for work. Anyway, I'm gonna go on and read. So, alright, we're on chapter 94. Chapter 94, The Battles. Marshall. Billy drove down the bumpy road, Marshall staring out into the pitch black of night that surrounded them. He'd just finished telling Billy what had happened with Fiona, and his godfather was not happy with him. Marshall, this is the first and last time you used me to lie to this girl. The disappointment in his voice was evident, but Marshall shook it off. He wasn't going to be lectured to like a child tonight. He still needed to come up with a solid plan. The only thing he could think of was catching a ride to Aberdeen's place and begging him to let him use his equipment to catch up on his missing vocals for Bloodrain's contract. Outside of that, he had nothing. He hadn't even called Hudson to ask. Marshall was desperately hoping that just by showing up, he'd be able to convince the man. It was a long shot, but right now it was all he had, and he hated it. Marshall, I'm talking to you. I know, Marshall said, finally snapping and rounding on the older man. It's not like I like to lie to Fiona, Billy. I'm not a fan of making her promises I'm not sure I can keep. Billy pulled the truck over as Marshall continued on, barely noticing. Do you know how much I hated looking her in the eyes and lying to her? I lied, and she trusted those words without hesitation. She needs something, anything in this shitstorm to hold onto, Billy. If you haven't noticed, Fiona's not okay right now, he said, his voice cracking. All of this is messing with her head so bad, and Fiona's so stressed out she barely sleeps. She can't make milk or drop it or whatever the hell the term even is. I know Fiona's trying, but she can't help disassociating when she gets this freaked out, wound up, or triggered like this. She's scared, and I think the fastest way to change that is by giving Lich what he wants from us. But I stop. Billy said softly, looking at the young man next to him who seemed on the verge of tears as he took heaving breaths. With a sigh, Billy shook his head and spoke. Marshall Lee, I did not do right by you, he said as Marshall's face showed its confusion. When I look at you, all I've ever seen is your father. When you sing, when you jam, when you crack jokes, I see a man who's gotten into and out of his fair share of sticky situations, mostly of his own making. I see a different man who would have the life experience to make the safe and smart choices, he said, staring at Marshall, who sat silently. But you are not your father. You don't have the life experience yet. You won't ask for help, and you damn sure won't share your plans. Kid, I need to know what your plan is here. I don't care if it's to kill the son of a bitch. Billy, I don't have one. The only plan is to beg Aberdeen to let me use his equipment to finish my stuff for Lich. That's the big plan. I'm abandoning my fiance and my baby to be a show puppet for a madman on the hope that this will work out. I don't even know if Fiona's really okay, Marshall said, now looking back out the window and into the darkness, staring towards the house. Marshall, this is a plan I can work with, Billy said, pulling out his phone. It'll be simple. I'll organize housing for you in the city. The fact that you're estranged from your mom is great news, because nobody will expect you to stay with her, least of all Lich. Do yourself a favor and give Hudson the respect of a courtesy call before you show up on his front lawn. You'll be asking a favor from someone who will make this or break it for you, he said, opening the door to the truck, now climbing out, Marshall following suit, not sure what else to do. They met at the bed of the truck, Billy lighting a cigarette. Take the truck and get a move on to your mom's. I'll head back to the cabin and keep Fiona and the baby company. In typical Billy fashion, he walked off towards the cabin in the pitch black. The only thing Marshall could see was the glow of the cigarette, as it too faded into the darkness. Climbing into the truck, Marshall sent a text to Fiona, letting her know Billy was returning, and that he'd call her when he got to where he was going. With a mental note to call Aberdeen first thing in the morning, Marshall turned onto the main road, heading for the interstate. Ignitus. With a gasp, FP's eyes snapped open, his heart beating wildly in his chest. His head was throbbing as the echoes of his nightmare faded from his mind. Sitting up, he felt the weight of Marceline's arms slide off him and onto the bed. He looked around, blinking the sleep from his eyes as his head continued to pound. Knowing he wasn't going back to sleep any time soon, Ignitus climbed from the bed. Taking one last glance at the sleeping Marceline, he left the room. The apartment was still dark, and as he cut through the living room to get to the bathroom, he caught the time, 2:20 a.m. His head pounded again, reminding him why he'd headed to the bathroom in the first place. When Marceline moved in, she got first run of the bathroom, which had been fine with Ignitus. It wasn't like he polished and primed to the point there would be an issue. Popping open the medicine cabinet, he scanned through her bottles and tubes, looking for something to relieve his pounding head, when he caught a glimpse of a worn, familiar bottle in the top corner. Quickly he shut the door to the vanity mirror and walked from the room. His headache could wait. Walking into the kitchen, Ignitus leaned against the counter, his fingers going through his hair and lacing behind his head as he sighed. He thought he'd gotten all of them, all the bottles, all the pills. At this very moment, Ignitus didn't even trust himself to touch them, let alone pour them down the drain like he'd done with the others. He'd been in a much better headspace than he was in now. Pushing the thought from his mind, Ignitus drank a glass of water before moving to the living room. Immediately, he spotted the gun that lay on the table gleaming in the moonlight. That, he knew, should have been dealt with the moment they got into the apartment. He'd been a fool to leave it there without at least the safety on. His papa would be rolling in his grave right now if he knew. Sitting on the couch, he reached for the gun. It was a familiar enough design and looked similar to the one Papa had taught him how to use. Ignitus could remember sitting next to Papa, watching as the man meticulously disassembled his firearm, cleaning each piece. The most important rules, Ignitus. Focus now, my boy, Papa said, watching as his grandson nodded. Tell me what they are. Ignitus blinked. Treat every gun like it's loaded. Don't aim it at anything you don't want destroyed or dead. Don't put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. Until you're ready to shoot. And know what's behind what you're shooting. Correct, but not the answer I'm looking for, son. We're cleaning and putting it away now. Those rules. Oh, unload it, clear it, and check the chamber. Bingo, he said, handing the boy a hard caramel candy wrapped in gold foil. Reaching out and picking up the gun, Ignitus removed the magazine, placing it on the table. Pulling the slide back and locking it into place, he glanced at the chamber and felt his mouth go dry. The gun was still loaded. Inside was a chambered round with a second round jammed up against its base. His father had genuinely tried to kill him, and the gun jammed. His whole body felt numb, and he'd heard the sharp clatter of the gun hitting the table before he realized he'd dropped it. On his feet, he was pacing back and forth, trying desperately not to think of the pills he knew were in the vanity mirror. Billy. The walk back to the cabin was a quick one, and as he climbed the stairs, Fiona was there at the door to meet him, Arya on her hip, fussing as she shook the bottle of formula. Marshall was right. The more he looked at the blonde, the more Billy noticed. Fiona had definitely lost weight and looked exhausted. She had dark circles under her eyes, and in Billy's opinion, she looked to be a moment away from a complete breakdown. Watching as Arya perched in her car seat, now fought the bottle Fiona offered, Billy spoke up. Fiona, do you trust me with the baby? He asked, watching as she looked at him. Of course I do. Then head on to bed, kiddo. You look beat. I'll handle baby duty while you get caught up on some rest, he said gently, watching as she shook her head. I can't sleep. I feel exhausted, but the second I lay down, I'm wide awake, she said, watching as Billy stroked his beard before looking towards the small table the lamp rested on. I think I have an idea. Pulling open the small drawer, he pulled out a small plastic tube, popping it open and peering inside with a grin. Mary Jane, he said, handing Fiona the tube and a lighter, this should put you right to sleep. He watched as the blonde looked from the items in her hands back to Billy. Fiona had never smoked before. She knew on occasion the guys in the band did. She also knew Finn and Jake occasionally smoked too, having caught them outside after Thanksgiving dinner once, before they went completely to town on the dessert table. As silly as it sounded, she didn't want to do it alone. First time? Billy asked, watching as Fiona nodded. Yeah, she said, offering the joint and the lighter back to him. It's easy, it's easy stuff, kid. Light one end, smoke the other. Inhale, hold your breath for as long as you can, and exhale, he said, lighting up the joint, taking a hit and handing it to the blonde. Fiona took it and hesitated, looking at the baby. F- Billy was Billy was holding her now, as she nursed hungrily from the bottle. I've got this, Fiona. It's okay. Billy said, watching as she brought the joint to her lips, taking a puff and immediately choking and coughing. This tastes gross, she said with a cough. Billy was laughing at her. So is alcohol, but nobody drinks that for the taste, Billy said, watching as she took another hit, this time managing to hold it for a moment before once again coughing. To Billy, the effect on the little blonde was immediate, and he grinned, remembering what it was like once to be so green. You, my dear, are very well baked, he said, taking the joint she offered and snuffing it out against his shoe. How do you feel? Fiona blinked slowly at him. Everything felt slow and sluggish and weird. That was a good answer. Weird? I I think I feel gravity. Pfft. The blonde burst out laughing, and Billy couldn't help but laugh along. She laughed to the point of tears and then laughed some more, so much so her stomach was sore. Slowly she calmed, looking at Billy with a smile. Her eyes lowered to her baby, and her face filled with longing. Leaning down, she kissed her daughter's head, feeling as the downy blonde curls tickled her lips. She smells so good, the blonde thought, sighing softly, smelling that beautiful, unique scent. Her eyes felt so heavy. Fiona? Startled, her eyes snapped open, and the blonde jumped. She turned her gaze to Billy, who smiled knowingly. Go to bed, kiddo. That sounded like a phenomenal idea. Mm-hmm. Turning, she walked into the bedroom. Billy watched as the blonde climbed on the bed, passing out. The moment her head hit the pillow, it was a wrap. Uh. Sorry about that, sweetheart. Uncle Billy usually doesn't encourage people to smoke in front of the kiddos, he said, looking at Arya as she suckled contentedly, her small hand gripping his beard. I do hope you'll forgive me. Ignitus. 38, 39, 40, 41. He grunted, his arms burning, his head throbbing as he did another push-up in the kitchen. Oh gosh. It was close to 4 a.m. now. He didn't want to wake Marceline. This was his battle and his alone. He continued on, watching as drips of sweat collected on the ground below him. The kitchen was the safest place in the house at the moment. The gun still lay in the living room where he dropped it, and the pills were exactly where he'd seen them last, still in the vanity behind the bathroom mirror. This wasn't working. Nothing he was doing was more distracting than the urge to grab those pills and swallow them and let the high take everything away. Nothing was stronger than his desperate desire not to feel this devastation. His father really did try and kill him. He actually pulled the trigger. Click. Every time he recalled the sound, Ignitus couldn't help the stab in his heart. His arms were on fire and trembling as he strained against his own weight. 64, 65, 66. He dropped to the ground with a thud, panting. He felt as though his head was about to explode. This was a battle he felt he was slowly losing. Click. Wincing at the memory and pushing himself to his feet, Ignitus walked to the threshold of the kitchen, looking from the gun on the table to the bathroom door. Click. Squeezing his eyes shut, he stepped from the tile of the kitchen onto the carpet of the living room. His head was killing him, and he just wanted the feelings, the pain to stop. He kept walking until he felt the cool, hard floor under his feet. Click! His hands rested on the door frame. Walking into the room, he opened his eyes after several steps, knowing that what he needed was right in front of him. Standing there, he looked at the reflection in the mirror across from him, feeling nothing but shame. Click! Swallowing, Ignitus reached forward, feeling his heart thrum in anxiety. The material under his fingers cooled at the touch. Don't do it, Ignitus. Click. He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. He had to. It hurt too much. Click. With a sharp tug, Ignitus watched as slowly Marceline's eyes opened. She blinked blearily at him as he gently shook her arm. Marcy, he said, his voice breaking. Marcy, I really need your help. Click. Thank God. Sitting up. Marceline. Sitting up. Marceline leaned forward, taking Ignitus's hand. Something was wrong. Hey, come here, she said softly, pushing aside the blanket. Gently bringing him towards her, Marcy's hand caressed his face before bringing her lips to his, pulling him down with her as she lay back. The bed shifted, adjusting to his weight. Marceline pulled him into her arms, feeling as his arms wrapped tightly around her, shaking as he pulled her body flush against his. Ignitus's mouth dominated hers. His hand clenched in her hair, near her scalp, in that delicious way she liked, moaning softly into the kiss Marceline felt as he slowed, abruptly pulling back. Bringing her leg around his hip, Marceline moved, flipping Iggy to his back as she straddled him. The fact that he hadn't looked her in the eyes at all hadn't been lost on her either. Ignitus, look at me, she said softly, her hands resting on his arms. She could feel him trembling beneath her. I don't want to do this right now, he whispered, his voice tight, feeling as she traced along his chest. His next words surprised Marceline, flooding her with warmth. You are no man's distraction, not even mine, he said, watching the emotions flutter across her features, her mind going back to the night of their very first fight. Marceline looked from his eyes to his lips and back again. She wanted Ignitus to kiss her. The feel of his lips against hers was something Marceline had thought about frequently after that night. Her breathing was quick, and closing her eyes, she tilted her head upwards, feeling as his lips touched hers. She released his wrists from her grasp as one of his hands tilted her head, and the other rested on her hip, his fingers touching the bare skin under her shirt. The sensation made her freeze as he continued to kiss her more insistently. His words from earlier in the evening were now ringing through her head. I never really liked her. If anything, she was just a distraction. Was she a distraction? Quickly, she pressed her palms against his chest, gently pushing him away from her. Stop, she said with a shaky voice. She didn't want to be just a distraction. She didn't want to be his distraction. Marcy, what's wrong? He asked in concern, seeing the look on her face. I can't do this, Ignitus, she breathed, turning away from him, feeling as he held on to her hand firmly. Do what? Marcy, what? I don't want to be just a distraction to you, Ignitus, she said, pulling her hand from his grasp and hurrying away from him. Hey, hey! Quickly he caught up with her, grabbing her shoulder and turning her around. Marcy! That's all I am to you, right? Just a distraction like Angel was, aren't I? She asked, sounding hurt. Yeah. What? No, of course not. What would make you think that? Again she tried getting away, but he held firm to her. Marceline, talk to me, he said, finally catching a glimpse of her face and staring in shock. She looked so hurt. I can't keep doing this with you. I can't keep just being your friend and then having these kinds of moments with you, because it's so confusing to me. What are we? Are we just friends? Because I can do that. Are we more than that? Because I can do that too, but I can't do both at the same time. I can't be just a distraction to you, Ignitus, okay? I can't. Her heart was practically bursting. Slowly, Marceline kissed her palm, placing it on his chest, resting just above where his heart would be. What can I do for you? Marceline asked gently, her free hand tilting his face to look at her. What can I do for you, my husband? She asked, feeling overwhelming love for the man whose heart beat beneath her palm. The man with the biggest, purest heart of gold. The man with the most beautiful soul I've ever met. What can I help you with? Marceline watched as his eyes flooded and spilled over. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. You can tell me, she urged, wiping his tears. Leaning down, she gave him a brief kiss. Tell me what I can do for you. In the bathroom mirror, he said, watching as she nodded. He looked away from her, but the gentle touch of her fingers brought him back. She would not have him looking away from her in shame, not when he was brave enough to ask for help. I thought I got rid of everything. Marceline knew what he was talking about without him having to say any more. I'll get rid of them. Climbing from the bed, Marceline walked, pausing to glance back at Ignitus before leaving the room. Pulling open the vanity, Marceline spotted the one bottle that occupied the vanity long before any of her belongings. Reaching, she grabbed it, popping the lid open and peered inside. There were dozens of white pills in it. Turning on the faucet, she dumped the pills into the sink, listening to the tinkling sound as they all rolled down the drain. Rinsing the bottle out, she tossed it in the trash. As she made to leave, Marceline jumped, Ignitus startling her as he stood in the doorway. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry that you had to do that for me. Hearing this, Marceline stepped forward, pulling Ignitus into her embrace. Thank you for trusting me enough to let me help you, Iggy. Marceline had known something outside of yesterday afternoon's events had upset Ignitus. He'd said he had a headache, and while she believed that he did, Marceline felt it was more than that. She'd made sure he was back in bed with some medicine and some valerian and chamomile tea with honey. Marceline stayed awake, watching as he drank his tea, his eyes growing heavy and his head leaning on her shoulder. Marceline pulled the nearly empty mug from his loose grip, placing it on the side table. Lay down, Egg, she said softly, feeling as he obeyed. Her fingers putting him to sleep as she stroked his head, his face snuggled into the pillow. Marceline stayed that way for the longest time, definitely longer than she needed to, but she wanted to be sure he was asleep before she moved. Reaching for a tablet, Marceline pulled up her work email. Her father's evening secretary was on vacation for the rest of the week, and Marceline was filling in, handling all after-hour messages Nightosphere Records received. Logging into the system, she found the voicemail log, having the system transcribe them to email format. Logging off, she refreshed her email and watched as a list of contacts streamed across the screen. She scanned through them. It was the usual hum and drum. Clients wanting recording time, others wanting to change managers, disputes over royalties, and what was this? Her eyes caught a glimpse of a familiar name. Hannah Abadir, meeting request. Recording length 27 seconds. Time 3:14 a.m. Transcript. Hudson, it's Hannah Abadir. I know you, of all people, is going to have a busy schedule on the first Monday of the month, but I need to ask if you could squeeze in a time to meet with Marshall. I don't know what it's about, but I know he's going to try and see you today about something he believes is important. Please, please forgive him. He has his father's rash judgment sometimes. I know it's one you are well acquainted with. If it's possible to meet with my son, please let me know. Thank you. Sorry, I got distracted by the computer dinging. Marshall, you're in so much luck, Marceline said with a grin. Swapping tabs, she pulled up her father's schedule and began scanning through his morning meetings. His morning was completely blocked up and all with major artists. Crap. Clicking over to cancellations, she scrolled through. Spotting the artist taking today's 9 a.m. time slot, Marceline punched the air in excitement. Realizing exactly where she was, though, Marceline tried jerking to a pause, quickly looking to Ignitus, who continued snoring softly beside her, his sleep uninterrupted. Accepting the cancellation, Marceline swapped to her father's schedule, editing it. 9 a.m. Marshall Abadir. Special notes, no natural sunlight. Comments, Dad, for real, I think solo might work. Marceline couldn't have been more blunt if she tried. She pitched an idea to her father about the best way to help Marshall and the band. He'd sat there and digested it and hadn't brought it up since. Her dad was notorious for spurning people who left. Those that stayed loyal were always treated the best, and with the most importance, and were given first pick for everything studio-wise. Those that left and returned were given all of the same benefits, however, they wouldn't get first dibs on studio availability or recording time. They would have to work around the others. Hoping for the best, Marceline clicked save and clicked the attaching link as a confirmation email and sent it to Marshall's mother. This was as much as she could do for now. Finishing up her dad's morning schedule edits, she saved them, putting the tablet on a dresser across from her. Carefully, she climbed from the bed, bringing the mug into the kitchen, but paused on the threshold, spotting the gun. Marceline wasn't sure what they were going to do with that, but she didn't want it out like this. Grabbing a shoebox, she dropped it on the table, bringing the mug into the kitchen. The sky outside showed the promise of a new day, and though the sun had yet to rise, she could even hear the birds singing. Placing the clean mug in the strainer, she filled the coffee pot, readying it for the day, setting the alarm for 9. It was just after 5 in the morning, and Marceline was hoping to get some sleep. Turning, she walked from the kitchen and into the living room. The gun, she noticed, was in two pieces. Picking up the smaller of the two, she put it in the box. The gun was heavier than she had anticipated it being. The top was slid back, revealing a crevice glinting with copper, which she found weird. She didn't know guns, but she knew that didn't look right. Turning it to get a better angle, Marceline felt her blood chill, and she understood. Immediately, she put it in the box, slamming on the lid. Looking around, she spotted the towel cabinet, and opening it, she reached to the very top, as far as she could reach. Managing to get it onto a higher shelf, Marceline tried pushing it as far back as she could for good measure. Walking to the bedroom, she climbed onto her side of the bed, grabbing a blanket, curling next to Ignitus, feeling the warmth from him. She'd been there mere moments when he turned, his arm wrapping around her body before pulling her close, his face buried in her neck. Covering his hand with hers and lacing her fingers in his, Marceline allowed her eyes to burn as she cried silent tears, squeezing his arm tighter, feeling as he responded doing the same. He was here and safe with her right now, and that was all that mattered. Marshall. The sun was rising by the time Marshall entered the parking garage to his mother's place. Shutting off the truck, he headed towards the elevator, putting in the passcode for the penthouse suite. When the elevator door opened, Marshall was met immediately with his mom, who held out a mug of coffee towards him. Billy said you've got to do this quick. I've already left a message on Aberdeen's voicemail at the office last night. I just got the return email a few minutes ago. His secretary will be rearranging his morning to squeeze you in first thing, she said, pulling on her red-soled heels, hopping on one foot. I have an appointment at 9. I have to head to work, and I'll see you tonight, Hannah said as she hurried into the elevator. Marshall exited, giving him a quick kiss on the cheek. Love you. Bye, Ma, Marshall said, watching the doors closing as she waved. Walking to the kitchen, he poked through the cabinets, grabbing a granola bar to satiate his growling stomach. Looking around, he took in the beauty of the naturally lit room as the sun rose over the horizon before pulling the curtains closed over the windows. Plugging his phone into the charger, Marshall made good on his promise to call Fiona. He listened as the phone rang through to voicemail, listening to the recording. At the beep, he spoke. Hey, Fiona, I'm here safely, and as I promised, I'm calling you. Baby, I hope you're getting some rest. I know you're worried about everything, but I promise I'll be home as soon as I can. I love you so much. Kiss Ari for me. I'll talk with you soon, Fee. Bye. Sitting on the couch, Marshall closed his eyes. He was just going to rest them for a minute. Opening his eyes, Marshall looked around tiredly before jumping to his feet, his heart racing. Patting his pockets down, he quickly grabbed his phone, checking the time. It was 8:40. He only had 20 minutes to get there on time. Marshall waited, his leg bouncing in anticipation. This, by far, was more nerve-wracking than their first meeting with Hudson Aberdeen. He'd been 5 minutes late, and he was still waiting to be seen. The door finally opened, and Marshall smiled, seeing the familiar face of their former producer. Marshall, it's great to see you. We're a bit behind schedule, so this will have to be quick. Come on in, he said, motioning into his office as Marshall quickly entered. Thank you so much for seeing me, Marshall said as they walked over to the desk. The room, he noticed, was dark. The blinds were pulled, and feeling a rush of gratitude for the man, he lowered his hood. To be honest, Marshall, after you and Fiona vanished those months ago, I wasn't expecting to see you back. Not so soon, at least, he said, lifting a new photo frame from his desk, smiling at it. When your father and his band left my company, I can't lie. I wasn't happy. I dreamed about how they would come crawling back, and how when they did, I would say no, he said, now sitting on the edge of his desk in front of Marshall. That so far has been the single greatest regret of my career. Regardless of the fact that my son-in-law is in your band, I'd be a fool to make the same mistake twice. Hearing this, Marshall looked confused. She did not marry Ash. There was no way. Marceline got married? Hudson smiled. It was quite the surprise to myself as well, he said, handing Marshall the photo frame, who took it with slight hesitation at what he would see. They eloped. It was a City Hall wedding. Looking at the frame in his hand, Marshall, feeling relief, grinned, laughing, and put his head in his hand. Do you know how much you just freaked me out with that news? He asked, now studying the photo. Marceline looked beautiful in her dress, and with FP was looking at her with complete adoration. He was more than happy for him. Fiona was going to lose it when he told her. Handing the photo back to Aberdeen, Marshall took a breath. Hudson, however, spoke first. So, it appears we're coming to the crux of our meeting. So, Marshall, what is it you're visiting me for? Hudson asked, placing the frame back on the desk. Hudson, I need to ask a huge favor from you, and I realize I've done nothing to earn any such favor from you. When I signed with Lich, it's because my hand was forced. I didn't want to. I went there that night to tell him to back off, he said, shaking his head. Marceline told me what happened, Marshall. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Her intuition is always on point. Marceline warned me against a meeting I personally had with Anderson Lich, and I've heard of all the issues that befell you. I understand why you left, Marshall. So tell me, what is it you need? Hudson asked seriously, now leaning forward. I need the use of your recording studio and equipment. I got sick. I was in the hospital for a few weeks and I got behind in my recording sessions. Lich sent someone to break into the house while Fiona and the baby was in it. That's why I packed us up and split. As a father, I understand where you're coming from, Marshall. You wanted to protect your family. I commend you for that. I'll see what I can do to get you recording time, but that will come at a cost, he said. Marshall nodded. He wasn't in any position to turn this down regardless of the price. Name it. At this, Hudson smiled. I figured it would be obvious. As long as Marshall and the Scream Kings are together as a band, I want you signed with Nightosphere Records. My daughter will one day take my place here. She should be producing her friend's music and her husband's music. Absolutely, without question. We all want to be back here, Marshall said seriously. I figured you would, which is why that's not my only condition, he said, watching as Marshall nodded. Hunt and Aberdeen, he knew, never made a deal that one, did not benefit him in some way, and two, did not challenge the person taking said deal in some way. You know I'll do whatever it takes, Marshall said seriously. I know you will, Marshall. I want a single from you, not the whole band, just you. As a whole, you're under contract. However, after examining your contract with Bloodrain, I did notice that he'd forgotten to include any of you doing any individual solo work. This includes singles, vocal work, musical work, features, and all of it. Call it a loophole, if you will. Sign with me as a solo artist. We'll keep this on the down low until your single is radio ready. The plus side is with both lead singers and solo artist contracts outside of their label, Bloodrain from a legal standpoint will be forced to reevaluate and and redraw the currently standing contract they have with you, as it appears your band is dissolving. That gives you the opportunity to refuse to sign. After all, you'd be a solo act, which will make their contract with you null and void, he said, now opening a filing cabinet and pulling out a folder. Marceline already had Ignitus sign. He was going to be the backup if we couldn't find you. Marshall shook his head in awe. You're brilliant. At those words, Hudson grinned. No, Marshall, my daughter is brilliant. I'm just a man who's had quite a lot of time to reflect on his mistakes. So is that a yes? He asked as Marshall grinned. Where do I sign? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this is looking good. I think it's finally reaching a turning point. Um, so this is alright. I'm really enjoying this book, you guys. This is so much fun. I'm hoping to do at least 4 more chapters, just because I'm a little behind on what I was hoping to do, because I I have no excuse for why I didn't record yesterday, except that I just got super lazy. So yeah, there's that. Like I'm behind quite a bit because there was that one night I said I was gonna do 3 chapters and then I only did one, and I was hoping to have quite a few chapters. Anyway, so I guess my point is I'm behind and I was hoping to get more done. So that's a thing. Anyway, I'll be back in a few minutes with the second chapter. I have some dishes and soak that I gotta go deal with. I'm actually gonna be cleaning up the kitchen in between chapters and also eating food because, I'm gonna need to take a break at some point to go eat food because getting recording makes me really hungry and I get hungrier a lot quicker when I'm recording. Like, if I'm just sitting around watching TV, I'll be hungry a lot less fast than if I'm recording. So, yeah, I'm gonna need to eat soon at some point. Anyway, I love you guys and I will be right back. So, hey guys, I'm back. So I'm gonna try and read 5 or 6 chapters today. I would have been here a little sooner, but I was actually talking, like messaging back and forth with my cousin about snakes for the last few minutes. because she posted a picture of her snake that she says she's had for like 15 years now, which is really awesome. Apparently, she has a ball python named Monty that I didn't know about, even though I was like, even though we spent an entire year together when I was like 15 or 16. So I don't know. Maybe I just didn't know, or maybe she told me and I forgot. I don't know. Like I remember doing a ton of stuff with her, but like I don't remember about snakes. Anyway, it's really awesome, and I'm pretty sure I I mentioned I'm like 100%. I'm like 100% sure that I mentioned wanting a snake before. Like, that's actually the entire reason why I'm trying to get a part-time job. Actually, not the entire reason. I also need like money for emergencies if my computer breaks or something, or I I need money for like emergencies. I need money for stuff around the house. I need money for just like various things that I can't get the money for, and I just don't have enough money to be doing that kind of stuff. And I haven't been paying for my phone and internet for the last few months. But I want to get, but I'm trying to get a part-time job so I can have money for a bunch of different things, including a snake. So, I'm hoping that by the time the next Reptile Expo rolls around, like in February or March, there was one like every month or two, but my mom only promised to take me to one, which was like right after her report card. So the one we usually go to is in like February or March. So the next one's going to be in either February or March, and that's where I'm going to be hopefully getting my snake as long as I have the money. Like, so, like, I'm reaching out to a bunch of places. I'm just trying to get a job so I can start saving and figuring out, like, saving for a snake and getting a snake. So, anyway, and I've definitely posted about the fact that I want a snake before. I think I posted a lot of times about, like, mm, I posted a lot of times about like wanting different kinds of pets. Like I did those vlogs back when I was doing daily vlogs about wanting a cat and stuff. And then I got a cat, and then I had to give the cat to a shelter. And then I got my rats, and I had to give them away because I was allergic. And just every pet I've had hasn't worked out for various reasons. And I was realizing when I was buying my tarantula, this is going to be the first pet that I'm going to own for the entirety of its life. It's going to be the first pet that I'm going to own for the entirety of its life and that I won't have to give away for any reason because things have been going pretty good so far. I've had it for like a little over a month and it's been good. And I also had my beetle for the last couple of weeks and he's good too. So they're good. Like, I can see both of them from where I'm sitting, and they're both pretty. Well, they're both hiding in the dirt right now, but like, I can see both of their enclosures from where I'm sitting. But what I really want is a snake, so I'm trying to make that happen, which requires me getting a job so I can make money because snakes are really expensive, and I want to make sure I'm doing everything right and stuff like that. So I'm just, like I said, I'm like going back and forth with my cousin about her snake. She has a ball python, so he's super cute. And there's an adorable picture of him like hanging off her nephew when he took a bath. Um, that was a long time ago. Like when she says she's had the snake for 15 years. So anyway. So I know there's still stuff in my nose, but it's been a couple days and I feel I can safely say this. I can't stop yawning. What the fuck? Ugh, my sleep is just. Anyway, it's been a couple of days. I've been feeling like this since Friday. And so I feel I can safely say I'm feeling like a little bit better. I'm not feeling completely better. It's like a significant change. It's not a huge change, but it's significant enough that I can tell that I'm feeling somewhat better. I may be like I'd say I may be like 25% better. Like I've still got a long ways to go, but in terms of congestion and stuff, the process has begun. Like it started and I on Friday I was recording like a chapter and I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to jinx it because I didn't know I could have been just having a particularly like not I could have just been having a particularly not bad day or something. Like I could have had sorry, I'm just like I said, alright, I'm okay, you know what? That's my last message till after I'm done recording. Anyway, but I was like looking that I've been feeling better since Friday, and on Friday I didn't want to say anything in the video because I could have just been having a better day, and so I didn't want to say anything, and then the next day I'm back to normal, but it's been like 72 hours now at least, and I feel confident in saying that feeling a significant I'm feeling a pretty decent change. I'm feeling like a significant enough change that I can tell that I'm feeling somewhat better, but I still have a long ways to go. So it could be, I don't know how long it's going to be before I'm completely back to normal, but I am feeling a little bit better. It's enough of a change that I can tell that there's a change, and that you guys can probably tell that there's a change too. And I don't know how long it's going to take until I'm completely better, and I know that the symptoms can also like come and go. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but I guess we're gonna see. Look, we'll see. But until then, I'm just gonna keep on recording and keep on doing my thing, and we're I'm gonna proceed like tentatively, like in case because it might take me a while. It might take me a while to feel completely better, and the symptoms could even come back. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. I could have like a back thing. I could have a back why can't I think of the word? I could have like a a back. I could have a backslide. There, that's what I was trying to. I don't know. I could have a backslide and I could get worse. So I don't even know what's gonna happen. But for now, I'm feeling a little bit better, and like it's not that much better, but it's enough that I can tell that there's been a change, and I'm proceeding carefully. But I'm pretty sure that you guys could probably tell in Friday's video and also in today's video that there's actually somewhat of a change. So hopefully, pushing forward, things will continue to get better, and I'll eventually be completely back to normal. I have no idea how long it's gonna take though, so just throwing that out there. Anyway, um, so I'd like to try and get into this. I want to try and get into this chapter. Okay. We are on Chapter 95, Better Days. Birds were chirping, and the scent of breakfast was filling the cabin, and as Billy sneezed, Arya laughed. Arya squealed, laughing hysterically. Both the sight and the sound of the laughing child made Billy smile. Opening his phone, he pretended to sneeze, snapping a photo as Arya continued her giggling. Marshall, he knew, would absolutely get a kick out of this, and so would Mokro. The amount the young man talked about that little girl was genuinely heartwarming to him. Billy had finished making pancakes and was now making mini ones for Arya. He looked towards the bedroom, half expecting the smell of food to wake the still sleeping blonde. Fiona had been out the whole night. Not that Billy had expected anything less from her. It was still early, far too early for her to be up. Rolling a pancake like a cigar, he put it in his mouth, dropping the mini pancakes on a plastic Tupperware lid, waving his hand to cool them. It had been great for him to watch Ari tear into a big pancake. It was every amusement he'd imagined it would be, and to be honest, it was something Hannah absolutely refused to let him do with Marshall Lee as a baby. The giant chunk she'd taken from the pancake had startled him, and immediately he understood why Hannah was so against it. Thus, he decided mini pancakes cut in quarters were the safer alternative. Placing them in front of the baby, he watched as she reached for them eagerly, taking bits and shoving them in her mouth. "This has to be your dad and you coming out, kiddo. He loved pancakes," he said with a smirk, now washing the dishes. Billy had known what his plan for the morning was, and having finished the dishes, he left a note for Fiona on the table. Turning, he lifted the baby from the pack and play and walked from the cabin. Is it weird that I miss Ollie Marsh? Wait, Kate. Is it weird that I miss Ollie Marsh and Fiona this much? Mo asked, laying upside down on the couch, his feet hanging over the back. Kate was sitting on the other side of the couch, mixing cookie dough. It's normal to miss people you love, Sugar. There's nothing wrong with that. Fiona and Marshall are our friends, and Ollie is your goddaughter. Everyone knows how much you love that little girl, Kate said, passing Moko the dough-covered spoon and walking into the kitchen. I get that it's normal to miss them, but I'm like extra worried, he said, licking the dough off the spoon, watching as Kate returned, now looking down at him over the back of the couch. I know they're fine, but I can't help but worry anyways. Kate smiled now. Her boyfriend's obliviousness was as endearing as it was sweet. Modestus, have you thought that maybe you worry so because that is your goddaughter? Marshall and Fiona gave you a new family member, and you're worried for her because she's your family. Mo continued, sitting upside down as he mulled these thoughts over. You're as exceedingly brilliant as you are beautiful, do you know that? Because that's probably exactly what the hell's wrong with me, Mo said with a huff, now pushing himself into some absurd semblance of sitting, at least to Kate. This was not unusual for him. Reaching down a hand, Mo smiled, accepting it, as Kate helped pull him to his feet. He did not, however, let go of her hand. Kate smiled as he pulled her close, she falling in step as he danced her around the living room around the living room and into the kitchen. There was no music. There never needed to be any, and that was one of the things Kate loved about him. Modestus, she swore, was sent to sweep her off her feet. Even if she was the one who'd made the first move, never did she imagine she'd meet the love of her life in a vintage music shop. Flashback. Kate was on a mission as she pushed open the doors. She had needed to go to Blue Jays, which was a small music shop down the street from the dorm apartments. The one thing Kate loved about the place was that they had those old scanners, the ones that let you scan the barcode and listen to a whole song from the CD through the headphones attached. Everything had been great until last week when a car had driven by blasting a song from her childhood, one her mother listened to. She'd heard just enough for it to get stuck in her head, and as the week passed, it had become embedded. Kate finally decided that if listening to it a time or two didn't get it out of her head, then she was a lost cause. Popping over to the RB section, she flicked through the discs, finally finding the ones she was looking for. Scanning the first disc, she hit the correct number, and the moment she put the headphones on, Kate felt a rush of warmth. Good music, she swore, could do anything. Good music, she swore, could do something to her soul. Closing her eyes, she let the music take her, holding the headphones closer to her ears to block everything else out. They did not make music like this anymore. Kate swayed her hips to the rhythm, moving to the music and smiling as she did. There was so much nostalgia in this music. Opening her eyes, she looked around. There were less people in the store now, and Kate couldn't help but notice as the door opened, and hello, cutie with the muscles. He was carrying a bulky box and wore a t-shirt, so it was pretty impossible not to notice his muscles. She watched as he walked up to the counter, talking to the guy behind it. Closing her eyes, Kate continued dancing, picking another song, and when she opened them again, she watched as the box carrying Cutie looked quickly away. Seeing this, she smirked. Hey! Kate called over, watching as slowly his head turned towards her. He looked embarrassed for having been caught looking, and pointing to himself, Kate laughed and smiled. Yes, you! Have any musical suggestions? She asked, pulling one side of the headphones off. I can give you a few great songs, but I'm not sure they'll be your genre of choice, he said with a smirk. You'd you'd put You'd probably be at least a little surprised by my music choices, Kate said with a smile as he did the same. What's your name? Modestus. My friends call me Mo. You can call me whatever you'd like. Well, Modestus, Kate said, feeling the name roll off her tongue, very much deciding that she preferred it. You look like you'd be a good dancer. Kate watched as he grinned, the simple action lighting up his face. Well, it's something I do enjoy doing. I'll dance to anything. You should show me sometime. Modestus, Modestus, she noticed, was blushing, and Kate watched as the guy behind the desk called his name, catching his attention. That was fine with her. Digging through her purse, she found a pen and a neon pink sticky note. Quickly, she wrote down her number and her name and folded it in half. When she walked up to him, he had just finished his conversation with the man who pulled the box back behind the counter. Turning, he seemed surprised to see Kate right in front of him. "You dropped this, Modestus," she said, placing the sticky note in his palm before walking from the store. He called her within the hour, and they'd had a date set for that weekend. It was a party at one of the off-campus apartments. Kate had given him the address. Moko had decided, as he leaned against the stone railing waiting for her, that Kate was trying to confirm the legitimacy of his dancing prowess. Well, she was in for a treat and a half. For the last 10 minutes he'd been waiting for her. All he'd heard coming from the apartment were the quick, rhythmic Latin beats that reminded him so much of the weekend summer block parties in his abuelita's neighborhood. Abuelita was his father's mother, and she'd been the reason he liked to dance so much. Moko honestly wished she'd stayed alive long enough for him to learn about his heritage, his family's culture. His father only knew the bare minimum, and Mo knew even less. Abuelita was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. She moved to the mainland states at 20 after meeting and marrying her very Irish husband, a volunteer worker helping to rebuild houses. Soon his father, Richard Ricardo, as Abuelita would call him, Cronin, was born. His father had been raised in two different cultures, never around either enough to fully know them, but around them enough to learn enough. Then his parents met, had him, and his father taught him what he could. His father had also taught him that being a different skin shade than the other children didn't matter. This was his culture, too. He could embrace it if he wanted to, and he did. The parties were what he loved the most. He would dance, eat, and play with the other kids, but while he loved this world, the older he grew, the more he felt a disconnection to it. He always felt like an outsider there, even though he knew he belonged. After Abuelita died, the summer party stopped, and the disconnection grew greater. When his father died, it was all but severed. It was in moments like this, sitting here on a warm spring night letting the music move him, that he was reminded. The thoughts made him smile. The warmth he felt spreading through his soul listening to this was the same he felt when he listened to the music he and the band made together. All of it felt like home to him. "Looks like I was right. You are a good dancer." His eyes snapped open, and in front of him was Kate, looking prettier than he'd seen her last. He genuinely didn't think that'd even be possible because she'd been gorgeous then. "How long were you watching me?" "The taxi dropped me off a minute ago or so." Kate was smiling as he pushed himself upright and offered her his hand. "I can give you a preview before we go in if you'd like." Never did he imagine she would really take his hand. Mo knew she'd seen his look of surprise, and despite this he grinned. Kate's hand tightened on his as he pulled her closer, his free hand moving to her waist, hers doing the same to him as together they moved in time to the music. Kate Kate couldn't lie. She was impressed as he danced them around the front of the apartment and up the stairs before holding the door open for her. Together they made their way to the party. Flashback over. The smell of baking cookies pulled Kate from her thoughts, and leaning forward, she planted a kiss on Mo's lips, feeling as he smiled. Their relationship was fun and exciting from the very first moment. His shyness with her she found endearing and sweet, and he was more than a gentleman. Kate felt as he released her, and walking over, he shut off the oven, pulling the cookies out from inside, placing them on top of the stove. Turning, he faced her, and ooh, she knew that look. "By any chance, baby cakes," Kate said, biting her lip, unable to stop her devilish smile. "Were you also thinking of our first dance?" she asked. Each of her steps backwards were matching his slow approach. She didn't want to be caught. Not yet. "I was definitely thinking of one of them," he said in a low voice, watching as her face flushed. Kate, he'd come to learn, relished the build-up, the anticipation, and the inevitable takedown. It was a game of cat and mouse that never went as he anticipated. Moko watched as she took a backward step over one of his shoes and knew she had something planned. Contrary to his own popular belief, he was never the cat. Smiling, Kate stepped through their bedroom, vanishing from view, and with a grin he followed her. Ah, Fiona. She could hear the sound of the cicadas and the silence of the house. Reaching out her arm, she felt around where Arya would have been. There was nothing. Opening her eyes, Fiona pushed herself up, blinking the sleep quickly from her eyes. She looked around, feeling panic build as she moved around the blankets. Where was her baby? The house was too quiet as she hurriedly pushed herself out of the bed. She tore through the cabin searching for her daughter as her heart raced. The car seat still lay in front of the couch. The diaper bag, though, had been moved and was now on the kitchen table. Taking a breath, she walked over to the table and spotted a note. It was from Billy, and the relief she felt was instantaneous. Arya was safe with him, but he still wanted to see her. Reading the note, Fiona made her way out of the cabin, following the map he'd drawn. Following the dirt path around the side of the cabin, she continued on trekking down the path. It took only a few minutes, but as she passed by a set of pine trees, she spotted them. Billy sat upon a boulder, a fishing pole in his hand, and Arya hung in a small swing attached to the tree just behind him, swinging gently. Fiona approached, the peaceful sight making her smile. Billy had attached a piece of fishing line to the swing and was pulling it gently as he fished, turning back every now and again to talk to the baby who babbled back at him. The moment Arya had seen Fiona, though, changed everything about that quiet, peaceful moment. Her chubby little legs started kicking excitedly as she reached towards her mother, squealing in delight. Fiona couldn't help it as she smiled, pulling Arya from the swing the moment she reached them. "Look at you, awake to see the sun," Billy said with a laugh, watching as Fiona settled on the edge of the stream, her feet in the water, and Arya on her lap. "What time is it?" "Almost 1, kiddo. You slept the whole morning away. Can't lie, though, Fiona. You needed it," Billy said, slowly reeling in his line. "Marshall's worried about you." "I know. I'm worried about him, probably as much as he worries about me," Fiona said softly as she held Ari's hands, the baby now standing and bouncing on her lap. "I know Marshall talks to Simon about things. Do you have anyone you could talk to, Fiona? Or anyone that you want me to reach out for you?" Billy asked gently, watching as she sat in silence. "It has to be hard dealing with it all and holding everything in," he said quietly, Fiona having averted her gaze. "Marshall and I, the one time we got into a real argument, it was my fault. It was the night he was admitted into the hospital because his hemoglobin was too low," she said softly, thinking back on that night several years ago. Marshall had been so upset. Flashback. "I want you to let out what you're feeling. I don't want you to hold it in. Knowing that you hold things in until you feel numb, Fiona, that hurts me more than you could ever possibly know. That means I'm doing something wrong in our relationship. That means I'm not supporting you and taking care of you like I should be. And I swear to God, Fiona, I want to. I want to do I want to do these things for you. I want to take care of you, to show you that you deserve more love than you could possibly stand. I want you to know that everything I want to do for you is not just out of love, but from the sole fact that I never ever want you to experience a single ounce of pain. Well, I have the power to prevent it, okay?" he said desperately. End flashback. "We fought because of me," Fiona said softly. "Because I hold things in and I don't talk about them. And I've been trying," Fiona said, her voice shaking. "Billy, I want my mom. I want my dad and my brothers. I miss them, and they're missing everything with Ari," she said, letting out a sob. "She didn't have teeth before we left. She couldn't sit up by herself, or stand, or eat solid foods, or anything like that. They're missing everything," she said, as Arya now took a particular interest in chewing her finger, making faint growling noises. "And I used to talk to Simone, but with everything going on that's happened, I haven't been able to get to or make any new appointments, and I know it's not safe to go there," Fiona said, wiping her cheeks. "Have you heard from Marsh?" "He called me earlier. The plan's in motion and then some. You may want to give him a call. He's been out of his meeting for a bit now," Billy said, watching as Fiona stood, Ari on her hip, as she dusted off the back of her shorts. "I'll call him after I feed Ari and put her down," Fiona said as she walked back with the baby. Marshall. The meeting had turned out better than Marshall had ever imagined it would. Marceline had been a lifesaver, and Marshall was going to make it a point to owe her one big time. Marshall sat on his mom's couch, waiting for her to get back. He'd been at Nightosphere all morning and a good chunk of the afternoon. Hudson had him booked for a week solid, daily 3-hour time slot, and had simply told Marshall that as long as he finished his single, he didn't care what Marshall did in those leftover hours allotted to him. So naturally, the first thing Marshall did was catch up on as many vocals for Lich as he could. Hudson knew he was still Hudson, he knew, was still anticipating his musical portion. He decided that on the days he would do music for Aberdeen, he would work on the vocals for Lich. The only thing on his mind was that the sooner he got this accomplished, the sooner he could be back together with Fiona and Ari. He missed them. He felt like such a baby, but damn did he miss them. Standing, he walked around the apartment needing something to do. Shoving his hands in his pockets, he walked around the suite looking at the paintings on the walls. The penthouse suite was so detached from the world that the only thing you were left with was your thoughts. No sounds of traffic nor nature drifted through the windows. If you were lucky, maybe the occasional helicopter would fly by, but other than that, there was nothing else. Just empty sound. Marshall didn't like it. Billy had called him about 20 or so minutes ago and told him everything going on with Fiona. Marshall had already called her parents. He'd been immensely thankful that Billy had called them, letting them know they were all safe when they first took off. He had asked them to set up phone appointments for Fiona with Simone. Marshall knew any deed left with Ellen would be done in no time. Now Marshall waited for Fiona's call. Billy said she'd call after putting the baby down. He looked at his watch and sighed. He knew he was being impatient. The more Marshall thought about it, the more that he was coming to the conclusion that maybe he was being selfish. He was just barging into everyone's lives, making demands and begging things from them. Fiona had been the one to send the postcards to their parents. He hadn't even so much as thought of them at the time. Marshall was ashamed of the fact that he hadn't reached out to check on anyone since they'd run off. His best friend got married and he didn't know. Neither he nor Fiona had used their cell phones since they'd left. Billy had made a solid point about the possibility of being tracked, and Marshall didn't want to run the risk of them being found just because he wanted to talk to his friends. Walking to his mom's office, and after digging in the desk for a few minutes, he found an address book. Flipping through the book, Marshall smiled. His mom was beyond predictable. Finding each one of the guy's numbers and addresses, Marshall wrote them down. Flipping pages, he wrote down Simon's as well, and Marceline's for Fiona. Dialing the number from the house phone, he listened as the line rang before a familiar voice answered the phone, sounding like they'd just been woken up. "Hey, Ma, what's up?" "FP, it's great to hear your voice, dude," Marshall said, grinning. "Wait, Marshall, are you guys at Ma's? How's everyone?" "Everyone's okay. Fiona's having a bit of a tough time, but we're working on it. We have a small spot where she's staying with the baby. Billy's staying with her while I'm out. I called to check in, and to say that Marceline saved my neck big time with that plan of hers," Marshall said, shaking his head, suddenly recalling the news he'd heard from Hudson. "And speaking of Marceline, I'm more than excited for you and Marcy Egg. Hudson showed me the photo of you guys at City Hall." "She's the best thing that's ever happened to me, Marshall. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be okay right now," he said softly. "But back to her plan. On an off note, is my wife not both absolutely sexy and amazingly intelligent?" Ignitus asked. Marshall could hear both the grin and the pride in his voice. "They scrutinized our contract for days, Marshall, but I'll be damned if they didn't find us a way out of this mess." "I owe them a lot right now," Marshall said softly, finally feeling the buzzing of the burner phone in his pocket. Almost immediately he could feel the jolt of excitement on his chest. "I've got to let you go, Ig. I have Fiona on the other line. Meet me at Nightosphere tomorrow if you can. I'm booked 9 to 12 every day for the next week." "Will do. Later, Marsh." Swapping over the line, Marshall could hear the sound of the baby crying in the background. "Fiona?" "Hey, Marshall, I'd have called sooner, but I've been trying to get Ari down. I think she misses you. I know I do." Fiona, he noticed, sounded stressed, and immediately he felt a stab of guilt. "I'm sorry I'm not there with you. I miss you too, Fee. Hopefully, if everything pans out the way I'm thinking, we'll be together this time next week," he said softly. He listened to the silence on the other line, and could hear Fiona trying to settle their daughter. Suddenly, Marshall had an idea. "Hey, put me on speakerphone. I'll sing to the baby." Marshall's idea worked without a hitch. Listening to the sounds of her father's voice, Arya was lulled to sleep. Marshall had spent what felt like forever talking to the blonde. How was she? How was she feeling? Had she eaten today? Were they okay? Fiona had responded, answering everything as honestly as she could. She was doing okay, not bad and not good. She was feeling overwhelmed by how she was feeling, and she didn't like it. She was scared, stressed, worried, and the list went on. Yes, she ate today, Scout's honor. After their game of 20 questions, and after Marshall had given Fiona all of the numbers and addresses he pulled from his mom's book, they both sat in silence, each holding the phone to their ear. Do you remember when we would do this when we were younger? Marshall asked with a smile. We talked till the sun came up. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk at all. You'd just play your guitar. Her voice held a trace of a smile, and Marshall couldn't help but smile as well. Oh, Fee, I have some news you're gonna go nuts over, he said, now grinning as he thought of Marceline and FP. Hit me, nothing can surprise me now. Is it aliens? Was Ash officially abducted by aliens? Hearing this, Marshall laughed. Nah, but it's in this similar realm of impossibility, he said, shaking his head, lying back on the couch now. Should I guess? Fiona asked, sounding more and more like her old self. Honestly, I don't think you'd ever get it if you did. Marceline and Ignitus got married. Now he listened as Fiona laughed, an actual genuine laugh that sounded so much like the Fiona from just a few months ago. He could feel the warmth in his chest grow at the sound. The sound of the elevator's ding caught his attention, and Marshall sighed knowing his mother would have things she wanted to discuss, especially after his meeting with Aberdeen. Fee, I might have to let you go, Marshall said reluctantly. My mom's back and she's going to need an update on what's going on, he said, looking over his shoulder. Spotting both his mother and Ellen, Marshall smiled once again, knowing he was about to make Fiona's day. Standing, he walked over, giving the blonde a one-armed hug. Actually, on second thought, you might want to stay on the line, he said with a grin, holding the phone to Ellen as she walked into the kitchen. He owed his mom a massive thank you, and the least he could do was fill her in on how his day had gone. Finn. This was either a very, very stupid idea or a good one in which she hadn't seen the bright side of yet. He'd been following Ember's dad around for the last week, and every night he'd go to the bar and stay until last call. For the first 2 nights, he'd stayed in the parking lot. For the next 2 nights, he only stayed a few hours, slipping out, being sure he wasn't seen. Last night, much like tonight, Finn was planning on staying until close. That, however, didn't happen. He'd been watching, sitting with a bottle of beer at the table when a fight broke out, catching his attention away. When he looked back, the man was gone. His eyes raked the bar when the sound of glass being set down on the table caught his attention. Turning, he was face to face with one Aiden Flint, pushing out the opposite chair with his foot, and with a grin, Finn motioned towards the chair with his prosthetic arm. Care to join? First few rounds are on me. The two stared each other down, but after a beat the older man sat down in the proffered chair. Finn waved over a waitress. Get the man a bottle of whatever he wants and bring it to the table, he said, handing her a 20. And start a tab, please. Big spender, already trying to impress me? He asked, taking the bottle of whiskey deposited at the table and pouring it into his glass. Nah, my sister-in-law waits tables. It's shit pay, he said, taking a sip from his drink. So, you've been following me all week, even after I tried shooting you. You're either stupid, you have a death wish, or both. Why? The look he cut Finn could have sliced through glass. I've got zero interest in causing you problems, Finn said, holding his hands up. It was the truth. I wanted to figure you out. I've known your family for years. Your mom was a wonderful woman. She lived next door to my parents for over a decade, Finn said, watching as Aiden took a drink at the mention of his mother. At this, Finn raised his glass. To Blaze Flint, he said, topping off both their glasses and raising his. The glasses clinked together and the drinks were drowned. So, what's it you do? Finn blinked in surprise. The fact that he kept a straight face for that question would have had Jake proud. Finn had often been told he wore his heart on his sleeve, not to mention, as Marceline and Peebles told him, he was as readable as an open book. Finn said, refilling their glasses once again, design custom treehouses. I used to build them, but I got into some trouble at a construction site I was working at with my dad's volunteer group, and I had a bit of an accident. This was where things were about to get interesting. Finn had a theory. The twins were huge on trust. Finn could only hope that by being completely truthful, he might be able to earn his trust enough to get him drunk enough to figure out what he wanted to know. Now the man before him laughed. So what stupid thing did you do that you managed to cut your arm off? Finn steeled himself. This was going to be a huge, long shot. Taking a drink, he spoke. I killed their friend. My little sister and her boyfriend got jumped by Big D before his family staged that coup. My brother Jake was the leader of the Bloodhound Pack. Big D was on our territory and attacked the leaders and the VP's little sister and kidnapped her. We heard her scream, saw him drag her into an alley and into an abandoned building. Vengeance was swift. My brother beat him into the ground. Big D put a hit out on my brother, and I found him fighting with Scorcher, the assassin who had a knife. I tackled him, pinned him to the ground, and stabbed him with it. I had the opportunity to stop. I didn't. In the heat of the moment, I had decided to act, knowing I very well would have to kill or be killed, he said, taking another drink. Well, I can't say I enjoyed harming someone. If anyone I loved was in danger, I can say I would do the same. Now he drained the glass, lifting his prosthetic arm slightly from the table. This was done in retaliation. It was 9 against 1, and it was my arm or my head. Finn watched as Aiden nodded, almost as if he were impressed. I can respect that. He refilled their glasses, the bottle close to empty. Seeing this, Finn motioned to the waitress, handing her another 20 as she deposited the bottle at their table. How did you meet my daughter? Like I said, my parents lived next to Blaze for years. I grew up there. We were summer friends. Ember and my sister met after she returned from her 2 years abroad, and Em and I started talking the day my sister and I broke up, that fight she was having with Ignitus. At the mention of his son, Finn watched as he downed the rest of his glass, slamming it to the table and filling it twice as high this time. He has been more than a disappointment. I won't pretend to know the ins and outs of your relationship with your son. He's deranged. He hissed, taking a gulp of his drink, now pinning Finn with a level stare as Finn refilled his drink. He's never had a conscience. Fights and behavioral problems all through elementary school, and at 15 years old, he took a baseball bat to the back of a camp counselor's head over a fucking argument they'd had earlier in the day. Finn now couldn't hide his shocked surprise. That was not what he'd read in the affidavit. And, of course, my father would rescue him. He treated him better than he'd ever treated me. He may be my progeny, but my father made that fucking monster. Aiden. Geez, that felt weird to say. Ignitus searches for approval wherever he goes, Finn said, recalling Ember's words. Is there any chance you're so hard on him because you were jealous of the relationship he had with your dad? The man before him did not speak, so Finn continued, hoping to fill in the silence. In the time I've known your son, he's saved my life multiple times. I've only repaid that debt once. He's housed and protected one of our best friends from her abusive boyfriend multiple times. He moved in with Ember at the drop of a hat because she didn't want to live alone. He hunted down the guy who drugged and felt up my sister. Turned out the guy was a serial rapist wanted in 4 other countries for almost 20 other assaults. The only reason nothing worse happened to her is because of Ignitus. When Blaze's house was on fire, not only did he arrive from home in time to save my little sister, who'd run in looking for your mom, he went back in and carried Blaze out. When the section of roof caved in, he got caught under that. He's got scars on the back of his legs from that. He may not do everything right, but he's not a bad person, Aiden, Finn said, shaking his head. Genuinely, he's not. Finn watched him drain the glass he'd been staring into. Aiden Flint, he noticed with satisfaction, looked utterly obliterated. He married her, you know, Finn said, taking another sip, now watching as he looked up to face him. To call his eyes bloodshot would have been the understatement of the century. Again, Finn filled his empty glass, and their second bottle was close to empty. The one who pulled him off me, he said slowly. He said slowly. The pretty girl, black hair? He asked, watching as Finn nodded. Yeah, that's Marceline. Marcy's a good girl. She's got a good head on her shoulders. She's smart, Amber loves her, and Egg listens to her. They're great for each other, Finn said, watching as the drunken man before him nodded, lifting his glass. To their long and happy future. I'll absolutely drink to that, Finn said, tapping their glasses together. Finn felt as if he'd learned a great deal this evening. Before leaving, he'd called Amber's father a cab and made sure the man was on his way home before heading back into the bar. There he paid an entire paycheck on the tab he'd run, and after dying a little inside at the current state of his bank account, he drove back to their apartment. The cool night air felt great on his face, and Finn honestly contemplated sitting on the stoop of the apartment building for a few minutes to enjoy it. But more than he wanted the cool air, he wanted to be with Ember. Making his way up to their apartment, he opened the door and was greeted with the sound of Ember's heart-wrenching sobs. Quickly, he made his way into the living room and immediately felt as if a chunk of ice had replaced his stomach. The fire was spread open across the living room table, and the moment he'd entered the room, Ember looked up at him, her eyes streaming. Immediately, she rushed over to him. Finn, what is all this? Why do you have all this? Why does it say my papa killed someone? She asked desperately, her eyes searching his, pleading for an answer. He would never do that. Finn, my papa wouldn't do that. He. Now Finn wrapped his arms around her, and pulling Ember close, she sobbed against his chest. Alright, that's the end of that chapter. I'll be back in couple minutes. I think I have to turn the light on too. Yeah, it's getting pretty dark around the end, around the back. So I should probably turn the light on. Anyway, so I've been like watching a little more Adventure Time too. I think I'm part way into season 2 now, but there's a lot more to go. And anyway, I'm gonna be doing that too. But I'm also gonna be writing chapter 2 of The Girl in the Bunny Hat so that hopefully it'll be finished. Like I'll be finished chapter 2 around the same time that I finish reading this book so that I can read chapter 2 of The Girl in the Bunny Hat right away. But if I don't, then I'll just work my hardest to finish it as soon as possible. Anyway, so I'm gonna go and I'll be back in a bit.